Hey guys, me again. This is a follow-up video of my last one going over Auren and how he isn't as powerful as some claim he is. This video won't be much. It will mainly be me sharing the other debunks and explanations I have for Auren that weren't big enough to have make it in the main video, alongside maybe explaining or correcting some stuff I may have said before. Obviously, this video wouldn't make any sense if you haven't seen the previous one. I suggest that you watch it if you haven't already, or watch it again so you have your memory refreshed. In the original video, I basically explained how nothing in the verse can be outerversal or anything beyond that. As in, nothing in it transcends all time, space, physicality, dimensionality, and all the typical jazz that could get a person to outerversal. Well, there's some other stuff that some people who are very desperate could use to say that the verse reaches those levels, despite everything I said beforehand. Both the Headless King and the Void have been described as quote-unquote Platonic concepts by Auren, and for some reason people take these statements literally. For the uninitiated, Platonic concepts or forms are concepts that fully transcend physical reality, existing beyond all time, space, and change in some sort of ultimate reality that exceeds and builds up the physical world we live in, which are ultimately just things that mimic these forms. With that being said, obviously neither of these characters would be actual Platonic forms. The Headless King is a character that exists within physical reality, explicitly including space-time, and the Void can be interacted with by dudes like the Headless King. This is given credence with the fact that other occasions Auren has described things as quote-unquote concepts in a metaphorical manner, like how he described the world tree that Tikva is from as the quote-unquote concept of peace. Obviously, it isn't a literal concept, it is a giant fuck-off tree that people live inside in, and these Platonic statements are no different. Even if for whatever reason we say that Auren's genuinely calling these guys Platonic forms, despite everything I just said, then these supposed Platonic forms would be so drastically different from what a real Platonic form would be, to the point we can't faithfully compare the two. This would also mean that Auren just sucks at philosophy. Like, most results on Google will tell you what I just described, like what a Platonic form is, and he's pretty much describing the exact opposite as Platonic forms. So, yeah. Yes, you read the timestamp correctly. Some people argue that the verse scales to Zalgo because there was this crappy little short story where Zalgo and the Void fought each other. The problem with this is that this version of Zalgo has literally nothing to him. No feats, no statements, no special hacks, or even a personality. So because of that, people would try to use various canons and stories written by a myriad of different authors across the internet with no real cohesion, just pretending that these stories work together despite all the differences between the versions and God knows what else. I understand that canon as a term is very loosey-goosey when it comes to creepypasta, but that doesn't mean we can't make a basic outline on what we should use to scale characters and how to split apart various iterations of Zalgo. So these various stories that are floating around out there that just so happen to contain Zalgo shouldn't be used to scale each other and should be treated as their own individual entities. Even with this in mind, it isn't clear on what version of Zalgo this is meant to be. Pointing to any version of Zalgo and claiming that that must be referring to the specific iteration of the character would be an entirely arbitrary decision based on nothing. The only slight exception to this would be the original version of Zalgo made by Shmorky, given it is the first iteration of Zalgo ever. The fodder two-dimensional Zalgo that only corrupts comics and shit like that. Given that, the Void being able to fight this version of Zalgo on even grounds is either an upgrade for the original Zalgo or a massive downgrade for not only the Void but the entire cosmology present in I Can Tell You What Is Killing the Stars. Either this version of Zalgo at his best scales to characters that can destroy lower universal constructs, a boost in power that is completely unfounded in the original source material he is from, or the supposed low universal characters and structures in I Can Tell You What Is Killing the Stars aren't actually that powerful and are just things that exist on a two-dimensional level, given one of the verse's most powerful entities fought evenly against and exists on the same level as a two-dimensional creature that only corrupts fictional comics. Both these results are absolutely absurd, and I don't think any rational, unbiased human would be okay with either one of these. The same can honestly be applied to really any appearance of Zalgo in other fictional stories. One last thing before I move on. Apparently a lot of Zalgo fans try to argue that this invocation speech for Zalgo is made by Shmorky. Just going to tell you now, there's literally zero evidence that this was made by Shmorky, and all the claims that it was made by Shmorky are based on this little crappy blog on the Omniversal Battlefield Wiki made in 2017, where this Super Bear Neo guy just claims that Shmorky made it without showing any actual evidence. I doubt this was made by Shmorky, considering it goes against his original idea of Zalgo, just some vague fictional entity that corrupts only comics and cartoons, not some kind of eldritch god that can warp reality. Aside from that, the blog in general is just pretty ass. Like, it heavily hinges on the claim that Shmorky made this Latin invocation, misconstrues the argument that Zalgo can't affect reality, and just mixes various Zalgo-related stories together, while also throwing in non-Zalgo-related stories, like the Library of Eternity, or pretending they all form a cohesive picture. Even if we do accept that this invocation as canon to Shmorky's Zalgo, it adds nothing to the scaling of the Void, Auren, or really anyone in the verse. Like, yay, the Void fought and defeated a monster that can destroy dimensions. Even though the Void's whole thing is destroying dimensions, except even better because dimensions that the Void scales to are more than just universes and can actually be confirmed to be, at absolute minimum, universe-sized, unlike Zalgo here. So yeah, this short story practically adds practically nothing, despite what the creepypasta dick writers might want you to believe. And if anything, it could just be used to easily be and if anything, it can be easily turned into a downgrade. That argument isn't really something I would use, but honestly, it's a really funny crutch argument that can be applied to any appearance of Zalgo and would be consistent with the original source material. I doubt there are a lot of stories or other pieces of media that make it clear that the world Zalgo is inside of isn't a piece of fiction he is corrupting. Isn't even like SCP, where what is reality is subjective and there are multiple layers of quote-unquote reality. In the Shmorky stuff, he is only affecting worlds that are explicitly wholly fictional. Now into something that I've been meaning to tackle. The Novelizations. If you don't know, there are two different versions of the story, both written by the comic tutor. The first is the one that my videos and profile on Auren have been about. The original series, as it was originally written back when it was an r/no sleep story. And what blew up slightly in the powerscaling community so many years ago. The second version is what the author refers to as Novelizations, a remake of the original story that, as far as I am recording this, still hasn't been concluded yet. Only 6 of the 7 parts are out, and honestly, you aren't missing that much. The only thing that received a big difference are the powerscaling bits. These 2 versions of the story shouldn't be used alongside each other, but honestly, it isn't like this remake adds much. With this remake, it is even more obvious that the story is trying to appeal to Gewsbumpz's tiering system. Like, it is emphasizing more on how universes higher up into the multiverse see less universes as, quote-unquote, less real. For God's sakes, the author himself uses Gewsbumpz terminology like reality fiction transcendence in the comment section. But despite this, not only does my argument on how these reality fiction transcendences are just dimensional differences still hold up, like they're still referred to as like dimensional layers, but these novelizations introduce a new way to spoil the cosmology, once again through the Headless King. In this story, the Headless King's realm has what is very clearly meant to be an universal statement, with time, size, and location. Just with the King's Court being a place that is described as existing outside of and transcending dimensions, space, time, size, and location. The problem with this is that it is said as a thing unique to the Headless King's realm, which is odd because because just like with the original story, Auren before this point had ascended through numerous universes within the hierarchy and has been studying the cosmology a lot. One of the main ramifications of a qualitative superiority is that it is inherently 1-A. Being a place that with a qualitative superiority would inherently be beyond space, time, dimension, and other such things. So if these reality fiction transcendences between universes were genuine qualitative superiorities, then there shouldn't be an observation Auren makes specifically for the Headless King's realm. Hell, like the author, just like with his dumb TikTok videos, still going out of his way to say that each universe in the multiversal hierarchy contains its own infinite amount of dimensions, yet the Headless King's realm just lacks dimensions entirely. Further adding on to how these reality fiction transcendences aren't true qualitative superiorities without universal ramifications. Although, funnily enough, even with an universal statement as explicit as that, the story still somehow finds a way to make it dubious on whether or not it has anything to do with universal shit. Because just like with the original series, space-time still somehow exists in the Headless King's realms, obviously contradicting the universal statement the author gives us. Like, I'm actually surprised that this somehow made its way into the remake upon my first reading. I thought for sure it would be gone, but no. Somehow this was looked over, even though the paragraph this originates from was greatly changed. But let's set that aside and full on accept that this statement means the place is universal, alongside the Headless King's statement of scaling to Platonic concepts, which, once again, the nature of these Platonic concepts are entirely unexplained beyond just haphazardly being called Platonic and dualistic. Well, the verse would be just baseline universal, barely an improvement over the original series, and as is far from being one of, if not the strongest character in fiction, like how the author likes to paint Auren as. That will be it for this video. Depending on how things go, this will probably be my last video on Auren. I'll just move on to other topics. I have other videos that will come down the pipeline at some point this century, mainly one that explains how qualitative superiorities work. I hope you enjoyed the video, or at least learned something new. You can Find more of my stuff in the description. Feel free to subscribe if you want. I will see you cucks later.